Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Stress Less, Accomplish More call. My name is Stephanie Matos. I'm a mindset coach here on the Brightly Thrive team, and this call is all about helping us learn more about stress, what it does in our bodies, and more importantly, how to have more fun so that we're not so stressed out all the time. I think we can all agree that stress isn't always fun. Even when it's stress for something good, it's not very fun. So sometimes, let's say if you buy a new house, then you got to move. Not very fun, but you enjoy the new house, you love the new view and everything that you have, but that stress in the interim isn't very fun. So even if it's something that's great and you're excited about, it can oftentimes cause a lot of stress in the body. And what we know to be true from a health perspective and even from a brain perspective is that a lot of stress is not the greatest for most things in the body, including the way that you think, including the way that you feel, including the way that you handle situations, including also your actual physical health, really takes a beating as well. Hey, Chris, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So that is why we have these calls. And then I was already talking to Jaime a bit before the call started that I do have a topic to talk about. However, if you two have anything that you want to chat about or have any questions about mindset, how the brain works, how stress affects the body, or how maybe you might be feeling stress in a certain situation or whatever it is, whether that's public speaking or emails. I think most people feel stressed when they open their email account, right? We can talk about any of these things. So I just want to welcome to the call and say thank you for joining me and know that you're more than welcome to join in on the conversation as well. So with that being said, does anybody on this call right now have anything in particular that they would like to learn about, chat about, talk about, anything that you would like to discuss before I get started with just chatting a little bit about some of the stuff that I pulled for this call? Anybody?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes. So as for me, I think um, I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about that black and white concept when it comes to stress, because I think we all, are very familiar with the effects of stress, and I think it's my first time seeing it as the way you put it, the black and white. What was it? Black and white
Thinking.
thinking. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll be
Okay.
interested in
So
knowing a
let's
little bit more about that.
I love that. I'm so glad that you're interested in that topic and we can talk about that for sure. So I would say, and then Chris, if you want to add anything in the chat or unmute, you're more than welcome to. Please feel free to interject. I already told Jaime that you're allowed to interrupt me, do whatever.
Sorry,
Okay,
appreciate that.
but
Thanks.
you're so welcome. So when it comes to stress, there's a couple different ways of thinking that actually causes us to have more stress. And some of these ways of thinking are attributed to, and I know some of the people who have come on this call before are actually student facing. So they work with the actual students, helping them learn. And I don't know if you guys are in that boat, but when it comes to learning, there's two different ways of thinking and learning and growing, and that is a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And what has been scientifically proven across the board is that when people are in a growth mindset, or when students or children are in a growth mindset, they actually do better things in their life. They have less stress. They fear failure less. They are able to have higher grades on testing and things. And we can talk about why that's the case if you guys are interested in that. However, this is something that is more of a flexible mindset. So if we think about the opposite of that is a fixed mindset, right? So a fixed mindset is like this pen; it doesn't bend. It's fixed in this position, and so what that means is that it's fixed in the way they think about themselves, the way they think about stress, the way they think about failures, the way they think about there could even be I'm talking about kids because a lot of this research was actually done on students, not just children, but also university, college students, and things. However, this is the same for adults and people that are not in education. However, you might have a fixed mindset. I'm just not good around people. I'm just not good at math. I'm just not good at technology. I am just not, I don't handle stress well. So I have to hide in this little bubble over here and never take a risk or a chance or do anything because I don't handle stress well, right? But what that is a very fixed way of thinking because a lot of these things are actually skill sets. So you can learn the skill set of learning how to handle technology better. You can learn a skill set of understanding how to handle stress better. You can learn how to do math better. You can learn how to do all of these things. It might take a little bit more effort than maybe somebody else sometimes. It depends on how your brain's set up, right? However, it's not at all true that we are fixed in one thing. So what we can do is make things a personality trait that are actually things that we accidentally learned through a series of experiences. Okay. So again, we can use a kid. Let's say a kid has, and really quick. So stress is an interesting thing because it attacks many different layers and things in the body. It does so many things, but one of the things that it does is it really affects your ability to think straight. So let's say I study really hard for a test, right? And I know everything when I'm studying with my little study partner, but then when I get to the math test, I blank out and I don't remember anything. Okay. So then I might start to think I'm a bad test taker and I stink at math and I might as well start looking into job opportunities or college careers or whatever it is that don't include math because clearly I'm not good at it. Right. So one experience, let's say when you're in a fixed mindset, if you have one experience that then tells you this is how you're going to be for the rest of your life, but it's not actually true. Right. So if we think about fixed mindset, one of the things, and this is what Jaime was talking about, was this idea of black and white thinking is that you're either all good or all bad, or somebody else is all good or all bad, or a situation is all good or all bad, or there's no point in me even trying because I know the answer is going to be no, or there's no point in me taking this opportunity, or there's no point in me saying that I can do this or that because I already know that I can't. And so when we have black and white thinking, what can happen is that it can start to become a habit. So a lot of the stuff that we do on a daily basis when it comes to our thoughts and our belief systems and our mind and our mindset, and whether we're an optimist or a pessimist, for example, it's probably no shock to you that more optimists have a growth mindset and more pessimists have a fixed mindset. More pessimists are a little bit more black and white thinkers, and more optimists are a little bit more like, but maybe, who knows? Just because it didn't work last time doesn't mean it won't work this time, right? And so, with that, basically, what happens is that your brain starts to create patterns. So, your brain is very much neurology based. So, meaning there's all these different pathways in the brain. And the more that you practice something, the more ingrained that way of thinking becomes in the neurology of the brain. So, for example, I have been driving since I was 16. So that's been about 40 years. Wait, how 40? No, not 40 years, 30 years. So I never have to think, what do I do at a stop sign again? What do I do at a red light again? What do I do at a green light? I don't have to even think about that. Or I've lived in this area for several decades. So I don't have to think, where's the grocery store again? Like, where I don't have to think any of these things because they're so ingrained. There are literally pathways formed in my brain for a stop sign, for a stoplight, for a green light, and all of this kind of stuff, right? Or even like where my friend lives or where the grocery store is. There's neurology built. So when we accidentally fall into a very rigid way of thinking, or a more fixed way of thinking, or a more black and white way of thinking, it can actually cloud every single aspect of your life. And so and cause you a lot of stress because imagine if you think I can never change, so I'll never be able to do this or that. That causes a lot of stress. And let's use the example of the kid in the testing. So when you are very overwhelmed or have a very overwhelming thing happen, or you're just flooded with stress hormones, which essentially is what stress is just a series of a lot of stress hormones. Basically, what happens is that your brain gets flooded with these stress hormones. And one of the best ways to describe this is if you've ever been in an argument with somebody, and then you're like, You go home, right? And as soon as you go home, you're like, oh, I forgot to say this, and I forgot to say that, and I forgot to tell them this, and I forgot to show that receipt, and I forgot to show that video, whatever it is, right? And that's because quite literally your brain gets wiped. Your brain gets wiped of what it knows, and luckily it's only momentary. It doesn't last forever. But or if you've ever, this has happened to me before, where somebody's like, I'm in a big crowd of people and go, Stephanie, what do you think about this? And I'm like, I used to have a thought about that, but now that you've asked me, I have no clue what to say, or whatever. This actually just happened to me in a meeting the other day. And I thought of this awesome answer after the meeting was over. I'm like, man, I should have said this, but I didn't have access to it, right? Because it was like, I got caught off guard, right? And so when you have an experience like that, it causes, a feeling of maybe shame or surprise, or it's a elevated feeling that, and I think you guys know what I mean. And if you ever don't know what I'm talking about, please feel free to raise your hand or just say, I don't know what you mean, or that doesn't make sense to me, and we can talk about it a little bit further. But let's say that feeling of, oh my gosh, you have to slam on your brakes, like that kind of feeling where it's like startling almost. And so that feeling, when it is coupled with a specific thing, so in this instance, we use the example of this math test, right? Where the kid's like, oh no, I knew this yesterday and now I don't know it today. And what's wrong with me? And blah, blah, blah. So what happens is that it starts to compound, where it's like, oh my gosh, I knew I was horrible. Oh no, blah, blah, blah. It's happening again. And da, 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 da. And then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger instead of smaller, right? Instead of like saying, like, this has happened to me before, and I remember that it's just stress. I have the information because if I had it yesterday, I have it today. Let me breathe. Maybe the teacher will let me go and just stand up and kind of shake my hands out and get a drink of water or something, or whatever it is that can help them kind of offset that negative thought process. But when a feeling is very strong, this thing that's called fire, the way the neurologists call it is what fires together wires together, right? And this is a neurology term, right? So every time I take a math test or every time I take a test, I bomb it. And then all of a sudden this gets wired together. So then every single time this person has a test or has a experience where they might get called on, like let's say it's like, oh no, last time I got called on and I didn't like that. And oh no, now every time I'm in this meeting, I'm gonna be like stressed out until the end because I always get, or whatever, right? So this happens, and the more intense the feeling or the more things that are at stake when you have that feeling, the stronger this gets connected, right? And so some of this is having an opportunity to go, is this really the truth around that about myself, or is it just something that I've practiced for so long, I've now created a habit around it? Is it true that I really stink at testing, or was it that I really just didn't know how to manage my stress levels? Is it true that I'm really not good at math, or what? Is it true that I have a tendency to get a little overwhelmed when I'm in a test taking position, right? So it's like, what is the gray area? So the black and white says you're either good at this or bad at this. You're either a great test taker or a bad test taker. Well, what if there's somewhere in the middle where it's like, I might not be the best, but I'm also not the worst. and this person might be awesome at taking tests and never have to do a deep breath in their life and just can remember everything with ease. And this person maybe just says, no, I can't remember anything. And then this person's like, you know what, if I breathe, if I do this, if I remind myself that this is just a state of mind, if I remind myself that there's a gray area and that I might, take a little longer than other people, that's okay. Right. So it's kind of allowing yourself to know. Now, just to rewind back, we mentioned optimist and pessimist, right? There's a lot of research on optimists and pessimists. And this way of thinking really does take a bit more of an optimistic way of thinking. Now, optimism does not mean delusional. Okay. So it's not like everything's going to be fine all the time and, never taking precautions or trying or whatever. Right. But it does take a bit more of an optimistic perspective in order for you to say, maybe I'm not right about this way of thinking. Maybe this more rigid way of thinking about myself or about my friends and family or about this or about what's right or wrong or whatever. is something that I can maybe think about, right? So I'll use a really like silly example. So I am somewhat type A, okay? So I I was a researcher for many years. I love science and data and all of this kind of stuff, right? So, but the thing about that is that there's a right and a wrong. It's either right or it's not right. Right. So let's even use like a math problem. It's either right or it's not right. There's not a gray area when it comes to 2 + 2 = 4, right? It's always going to equal 4, right? And that's a very area where black and white thinking actually serves us very well, right? However, what served me very well here, like let's say in my career or with researching for books or whatever it was that I was doing, didn't necessarily serve me very well in my home. Okay. So let's say my partner is washing the dishes, but he's not washing the dishes the way that I want them to be washed. Right? Like you're not using enough soap or too much soap or turn on the light. You can't possibly see if those dishes are clean like that or stacking the dishes in the dishwasher a specific way because that's the right way or whatever, right? So there's the thing about this is that there's some things in us that are really really helpful, but when we are rigid in other things that actually there's a million different ways to wash the dishes. There's a million different ways to fold a towel. There's a million different ways to put away the dishes or whatever it is, right? Whenever it's something like that, it causes us a lot. I'm pointing to myself, if you can see that. It causes people like me a lot of stress. However, that's such a great opportunity because as soon as we start to feel stress around you're not doing that right, we can go, do I want to be right in the situation or do I want to be happy? Right? Do I want to be right in the situation or I just want to feel calm and not care? Do I want to feel right in the situation or do I want somebody to actually help me with stuff? Right? Because what would happen sometimes is that I would think that I would have to do everything because I was the only one that did it right. I was the only one doing it right. And this can happen in business. This can happen in companies where, we're afraid to delegate maybe because we're afraid that somebody might do it wrong when really they're just doing it in their way, which maybe not it, and sometimes it's actually not the most effective way, but the end result is the same. So maybe it takes them 10 times longer than it might have taken you, but it's okay because it got done and you didn't have to do it, right? So I think that there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of look at this black and white thinking. But the one thing that I want to also just point out is we can have black and white thinking about how we feel around our work as well. So if you've had a series of days that were very stressful, what can happen is that your body can start to prepare yourself for more of the same. So it'll be like, here we go again. So even if that day is going to be epic and awesome and an easy day, you've already woken up and decided it was going to be hard. Right. And so again, being flexible with like, but what if it's awesome? What if it's okay? What if I set the powerful intention that today's going to be an amazing day and I don't have this expectation that so and so is going to bother me or that I'm going to get dumped on, this project's going to get dumped on me or whatever it is, right? Whatever it was that was happening in that more kind of stressful situation. Stress is an interesting thing because it can create habits. And when I say habits, they're no different than chewing your nails or some people smoke cigarettes or whatever it is. It's no different that it starts to create this where you wake up feeling stressed and you go to bed feeling stressed and you wake up feeling stressed and you go to bed feeling stressed, but there's nothing going on to cause it. And it can actually start to take over in this way. So we have plenty of time to ask questions or answer questions. I would love to hear it. Does all of this make sense, first of all? Did you find it interesting? And do you have any questions or examples of how maybe this has popped up for you? Anybody?
Oh yeah, definitely makes sense. For me, I was interested in the application for the workplace and how sometimes well, because the same thing has been happening to me, getting to the workplace and then thinking this bad thing that happened, a couple of weeks ago is gonna repeat itself, the same dynamics. And I think, yeah, it starts with your mindset and it starts with you. And even if the same things happened, the way you approach them certainly will make a difference. So yeah, everything you said
1000%.
was makes sense.
Love that. And you know what? I would love to even piggyback on that. And then Chris, again, I just want to make sure that you know you're more than welcome to jump in at any time as well. There's this thing. See this really quick. Where'd my chat go? There it is. I'm really glad there are these sessions. I always get something from them, like today, getting things into perspective, letting go of the small things. Oh my gosh, dishes, anybody? That was me. Like, that's not right. You're not washing those right. Oh man. I'm glad I was able to release that. Things that don't matter as much. My day today is a bit busy and I need to head to a meeting. Thank you. Oh, bye, Chris. Thank you for joining us while you could. I
Thank you. I
appreciate you
appreciate it.
coming.
I
Oh,
appreciate it.
you're
And
so
even
welcome.
even just being able to drop in for a few minutes of these are always great. So thank you very much.
Yay, and thank you for taking the time to drop in while you have the time. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Bye guys.
So bye. So you know what you were just saying about it's almost an expectation that things are going to be bad, or that it's an expectation of here we go again, another stressful day, or here we go again. You know, it becomes an expectation. And there's actually a research study done on expectation. It's called the expectation effect, actually. And so when we expect something to be hard, it's more likely to be hard. If we expect something to be easy, it's more likely to be easy. If we expect ourselves to be able to handle things with ease and flow, we're more likely to handle them with ease and flow. If we expect things to be more challenging for us, they're more challenging. And so let's use that example of a lot of people that I work with in other places, other companies, they're very tech challenged. And so what happens is that the second we tell them, "Oh, join this Zoom," or da da da, da something like that, they're already anxious, thinking that it's going to be hard. Okay. Then those are inevitably the people that are like, "I clicked on the link and it didn't work." Da, da, da. You know, when really it could just be as easy as click and you show up in the room. Right. And so what we want to do is understand that when you start to, so let's use this person with the tech challenge, right? So if they already know and expect that they're not going to be able to handle this tech well because they have labeled themselves fixed mindset, I'm not good at tech, I stink at tech, tech is hard for me, I'm not good at it, it doesn't like me. I've heard people say that too, it doesn't like me, right? What happens is that how do you approach it? Well, you're probably not going to read everything thoroughly and your brain's not going to comprehend it because you're already expecting not to understand it. So you might not even bother to read all the stuff. But then at the end of the day, then it doesn't work. Right. So then you don't do all these things, but you don't realize you're not doing it. That no, they don't realize they're not doing it. Then they click the button, it doesn't work, and then they go, see, I told you. You guys said that I could do it, and I told you I couldn't. But this is the thing: is that then it adds more layers of proof as to why this way that you're thinking is true, right? And really, it's
Yeah.
not true.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm just remember the time when before going to college, I went straight to work, a full-time job, like taking orders for building billboards, and, on the street.
Mhm.
And something was telling me that I should have gone to college, right? And that was cause of stress. And I remember I only lasted like 3 months on the job because I couldn't, something prevented me to even learning the process to taking the
Yeah.
orders and think and learning all the in and outs of the role. And it's always been daunting on me, like it wasn't that complicated, but some reason I never was able to learn it. And it's basically what you're saying, right?
Oh
That
my goodness,
cause of
yeah.
stress was preventing me to get ahead because I was telling myself, okay, you need to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And in that case, it was something, beneficial because it led me to another path in my life, and I'm grateful for that. But I think it's an example of what you're saying, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Because the thing is that you're like, I'm very smart. The process wasn't that hard. And this, but you were constantly like in your own head saying, this isn't for you. This isn't right. This isn't right. And you are correct. Sometimes that chatter is so loud because we're supposed to do something else. 100%. I would agree with that. However, the funny part is that you're like, it wasn't that hard, but for some reason I couldn't get it. And now you understand. It was like it basically what happens is almost like a barrier of entry into the brain. So the stress hormones come up and it's like the data is trying to go in. And this is what happens in that tech example. So it's like, so I had a woman recently that she's like, I'm really afraid, because I work in other companies where there's a lot of different coaches and all kinds of stuff. And she's like, I'm really afraid to go back onto so-and-so's call because I already asked that question, but I did not really understand it. And I explained to her, I'm like, I think it's because it's tech and you find it challenging. So I think you probably were a little bit overwhelmed. But I think the second time you hear it, just do some deep breathing, calm yourself down, and let them know. Say, I know you've already told me this, but can you please just explain it again? They don't care, by the way. I told her, I was like, they're not going to care if you ask again. She was really, and so that was another thing that was causing her nervousness, was that she's like, they already told me and I didn't understand. And I said, they don't care. It's okay. But just me telling her it's okay, it's safe, just take some deep breaths. This is probably why it didn't land in your brain. She was able to go back the second time and it landed that time. And when I say landed, I mean literally it went in. It like landed, because before it was like she was like, like nodding, but nothing's going in, you know. And I've done this so many times with, like, let's say if you're at an event and somebody's like, my name is this, and you're like, oh, nice to meet you. And then 2 seconds later, you're like, what was their name again? You know, so, and I have a tendency to get a little bit more kind of social, not really social anxiety, but I get overwhelmed with a lot of people. And so what happens is that nobody's brains or nobody's names can get landed into my brain. So I have to actually take the time to go, you're going to remember people's names today. You're going to calm down. It's all okay. And go in with that intention of actually remembering everybody's names, because it's very much the same thing. Yeah. Cool. So Jaime, it was very nice to meet you today. I hope did you enjoy today's session?
Oh yeah, very much so.
Yay! I hope I get to see you again. I host
Yeah.
these calls every Monday and Tuesday, and then once a month I have it on a Wednesday evening. Yeah, so if you're
Okay.
ever able to
At the
join
same time?
again, join me. The one on Monday is at noon EST. I know the
Okay.
EST time, but I know Arizona is a bit weird because it doesn't change time zone. So I
Yeah.
always say EST time zone because I'm like, I don't
So
know.
that would be 9 o'clock over here then.
Okay. And
Okay.
then the Thursday is, so I do this one at 2 EST. Sorry. No, the one on Monday is at 3 p.m. EST. 3
Okay.
p.m. EST.
So 12.
Sorry. So it's
Okay.
noon for you.
Let me
Look,
take a
I said
note
that I
of
wasn't
that.
going to say the Arizona time, and then I said the Arizona time. Okay. So the Monday one is at 3 p.m. EST.
Okay.
And then this one is obviously at 2 p.m. EST. And then the one every third Wednesday, I have one in the evening at 7 p.m. EST every third Wednesday, which I think is next Wednesday coming up.
Good third Wednesday. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Hopefully I'll
Awesome.
come back. Yeah. And
Yeah, please
again.
do. Yeah, and like
Okay.
Chris, he only came for a bit. Like, you please come. If you can only come for 5 minutes just to wave, say hi, and whatever, I would love to have you. Okay.
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay, so
Yeah.
awesome time with you, awesome conversation. Until we meet again, so much love, so many blessings to you, and I hope to
Yeah.
see you very soon. All right,
Yeah.
bye everybody. Bye.
Bye.